Hi everyone, my name is Tim Kington and this is Coding is for the Birds. This is part of the Java for Beginners series. Last time we talked about if statements and I left you with a challenge, so we'll look at the solution to that. And then today we're going to talk about the switch statement. We'll start with our basic Java project as usual. Last time I left you with a little puzzle. It was to ask the user for a temperature and then print the state of water at that temperature. So let's take a look at the solution of that. We need a scanner to read from the user. We'll put an in.closing just to get rid of our warning. We need to ask the user for a temperature. And then we'll store that. Say in.next. I guess do we want, maybe we can have a fractional temperature, so we should say in.next double. Let's make temp a double. And then we're going to print the state of water. So we're going to say if temp is less than 32 degrees, then we'll print ice. Else if temp is less than 212 degrees. And of course, if you're doing this in Celsius, your numbers are going to be different, and this will be simpler. Here we have water, and we can put an else, and we can print steam. Or we could say liquid, solid, and gas in here. You get the idea. So if we run this, we can try some temperatures. 31 is going to give us ice. If we try 65, we get water. And 213 gives us steam. Let's take a look at the switch statement. The switch statement is used when we want to run different code based on the value in a variable. So we could have an integer x, and for now I'm just going to give it a value so that the code will compile. If we say switch x, we can then write cases that will execute for different values of x. So if x is equal to 1, then this code will run and we'll do something. Then you end your case with a break, and then you can write the next case, case 2. If x is 2, we'll do this and break. So for now, let's put some code in here and we'll say x is 1. And here we'll say x is 2. And let's change x to be read from the user. So if I run this code, and we put in 1 for x, it prints x as 1. If we put in 2 for x, x is 2. If we put in some other value for x, nothing happens. So the switch statement is really a substitute for a series of if-elses. We could have written code like this. If x equals 1, have some code in here, else if x equals 2, and then else. And we can go on like that and chain a bunch of these together. Typically, this should be indented one level below the cases, by the way. Often people like to keep the cases even with the switch. That's sort of a matter of personal preference. So here we have our switch. We can have as many cases as we like. And we can also have a default case. This is going to run when nothing else matched. We should still put a break here, even though we're not really required to. Now, if I run this and I enter a value like 6, we're going to see that we hit the default case. So the way a switch works is we're going to look at the value of x, we're going to go to the matching case, we're going to execute the code in that case. If there's a break at the end of that case, which there normally will be, the break will take us to the end of the switch statement, and we will continue executing code after that. So we could have code here and do something after the switch. So if we put in 1, you can see that it runs the case where x is 1, and then it jumps to the end of the switch statement and picks up execution here. In a switch statement, we don't have to have breaks. We can do what's called fall through. So if we get rid of the break for case 1, when x is 1, we're going to run the code in this case. And then since there's no break, we will continue into the next case. I put in a 1 here, we see x is 1, x is 2. Then we hit this break, which takes us to the end of the switch, and then we print next thing. So you can get clever and sort of combine your cases and have this fall through happening. This is generally not a good idea. It makes your code confusing. Most of the time when somebody's reading your code, they're not paying that much attention to whether there's a break at the end of each case. Let's take a look at a typical use for a switch statement. A really common case is displaying a menu for a user and allowing them to choose an option in some kind of a command line interface. So let's do that. So first we'll print a menu. One will be add some numbers. And let's add some other menu options. 2 could be double a number. 3 will be check bigness. And we don't really need a 4th option. We'll ask the user, please enter your choice. Then we'll get their choice. So we'll say in.nextInt. And we'll store that in a variable, choice. And then we're going to have a switch statement to decide what to do. So based on their choice, case 1, we're going to add some numbers. So we will ask the user for 2 numbers. And then we'll say x is in.nextInt and y is in.nextInt. And then we'll print the sum. And then don't forget we need a break at the end of our case. Case 2, we're going to double a number. So we will ask for that number. And then we're going to print out double that number is 2 times x. Need a break. And then case 3 is check bigness. So we're going to ask for a number. And then we will store that in x. And if x is bigger than something, 100 say, yep, that's big. Else we will print is unimpressed. We can have a break here. So this is the kind of code you might write. Now, VS Code isn't doing the indentation here the way I like it. I'm not sure why it's doing this by default, but you really need the cases to not be on the same level of indentation as the code inside the cases. Okay, so we've got some code here. Now we've got some errors. This is complaining that x is a duplicate local variable. What that means is we already have a variable called x that's in scope. We're going to be talking in more detail about scope soon when we start talking about loops and method calls. For now, we'll just say that we have an x defined up here and we have an x defined down here, and that's no good. So let's just rename this one for now. We'll call this one z. And then down here, we'll make this number a, and that will solve our problem. So if we run this code, we can see what happens with the flow. We enter 1, it says enter 2 numbers, we'll put in 3 and 5, and it says the sum is 8. If we enter 2 for our choice, and we enter a number 12, it prints double the number. And if we choose 3, then we can put in a number and it will tell us if it thinks it's big or not. We can also add a default case in case the user doesn't enter one of the options that we have offered. And here we can print some kind of error message. Basically let them know that that was not one of the choices that they had available. So here we'll put in 45 and it says, huh. This is a pretty typical use of a switch statement. The code's starting to get kind of ugly here. This is big. We kind of had a lot of code inside of each of these cases. And we'll be able to fix that soon. We need to learn how to write methods, and then we can reorganize our code a little bit and clean it up, make it easier to read. So that's your basic switch statement. Toward the end there, our code started to get a little bit messy and hard to read. Next time, we'll be talking about defining methods and calling them so that we can rearrange our code a little bit and get it more organized. Daisy says we're done. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.